Welcome, webinar viewers. My name is Bryan McQueeney. I'm with the communications and marketing team here at Wespath. To my left, Chief Investment Officer Johara Farhadieh. Great to be speaking with you today, Johara.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
And then making his webinar debut, Bryan Mjaanes, our Chief Information and Technology Officer. Welcome, Bryan. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, let's see if you're still appreciative of it after this line of questioning. But we wanted to get Johara and Bryan in to talk about artificial intelligence, the AI revolution from both an investor's perspective and an IT professional's perspective. So Johara, I'm going to start with you. Over the past couple of years, there has been a lot of talk about AI in our investing world. That's more or less coincided with the dominance of the Magnificent Seven stocks, which of course we've talked a lot about on previous webinars. But in your own words, what has this investment theme looked like up through 2025?
Sure. And you're absolutely right, Ryan. Artificial intelligence is almost all anyone talks about these days when it comes to investing. And that has a lot to do with how much it's grown. So AI market share, before I talk about what's currently happening, AI market share is about 390 billion today, and it's estimated to grow to 1.8 trillion by 2030. So if anything, from an investor perspective, this is truly a growth opportunity with a lot of potential. Of course, has its own challenges and opportunities. But from what we've seen to date, obviously the Magnificent Seven play a significant role. We're talking about Apple, Meta, Alphabet, NVIDIA. Not that I think I need to name those seven stocks by any means. I'm sure our audience is familiar with them. So, we've noticed a lot of these companies have been willing to spend significant capital expenditures, continue to increase the CapEx when it comes to AI and AI infrastructure. And as you've seen, between 2023 and 2024, these stocks have literally increased about 150% collectively.
Impressive.
Significant.
Yep.
And then by the end of 2024, we noticed within the S&P 500, which is a benchmark that many of us are familiar with, these names have been about a third of the index now, which really AI has been able to shape the index, significantly move the market. So it plays a significant role. So it's something that the staff and I really spend a significant amount of time and continue to evolve and ensure that we have the appropriate exposure. It's a significant part of our investment theme.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting for me about those seven companies is you really see the breadth of the AI theme. It's everyone from the software leaders with the chatbots to autonomous vehicles and the chips that are in these technologies.
Yes, it's across industries and sectors. So lots of opportunity.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, thanks, Johara. And you mentioned 2023 and 2024 specifically as kind of where we've really seen that theme take off in the markets. That, of course, kind of brings us all the way back to late 2022, which, of course, is when ChatGPT launched. And that wasn't the beginning of this AI theme by any stretch, but certainly it brought it kind of into the daily lives of so many people. Bryan, it's one of the fastest growing consumer software applications in history, ChatGPT, and then its competitors beyond that. To me, hard to even quantify its impact and how our relationship with these types of models has changed in that time. You are someone that presumably has spent most of your career or your entire career helping people and organizations adapt to and integrate emerging technologies like this. How does this trend compare to others that you've seen in your career?
I think, it would be appropriate to say it's really unprecedented, I think. Mm-hmm. I think Johara's points about, the market shift and the market expectations around AI is one indicator of that. But when you look and you compare the AI revolution to what else, other big technology shifts that have occurred in the past, PC, television, internet, mobile phones, et cetera, the scale of adoption of AI is absolutely off the charts. Mm-hmm. What you think about it in terms of like cost of entry, the first PC, if you bought it today, would be about $5,500 in today's dollars when it came out. The first cell phone in today's dollars would be about $15,000. The cost of entry for AI is zero. right? Anybody that has internet access can use AI platforms free of charge, right? And to their heart's content. And so I think with 5 billion people on this planet that have internet access, roughly 70% of the entire world population, the cost of entry zero, it's not shocking that we're seeing this, hockey stick type logarithmic curve adoption. So.
Well, it's a really good point. I think that accessibility is such an interesting part of the trend. Johara, to shift back to you a little bit, said we'd get back to, or we already talked about earlier, the Magnificent Seven's performance. And we talked about 2025 a bit, but so far this year, there's been a little bit of cooling off in that trend. Notably, we've seen international stocks significantly outperform U.S. stocks so far this year. So at least we can say that the whole stock market's performance so far in the past several months hasn't been driven by these handful of companies like it largely has over the past couple of years. One thing I know you're really interested in with this AI investing craze is the opportunities outside of just those Magnificent Seven. We talked about how those 7 companies have a real solid breadth across the different AI themes, but they're not the only ones taking advantage of this new technology. The other 493 stocks in the S&P 500 or beyond, international companies, smaller companies, mid-sized companies. When you think about AI opportunities outside of just the Mag 7, what comes to mind from an investor's perspective?
So when we think of AI and investing, it's absolutely global. So it goes beyond the S&P 500 and it goes beyond, the 493. As we were talking about earlier, AI is across all different sectors. We're seeing an increase of use in AI in healthcare sectors. We're seeing it in our own financial sectors.
Right.
We're seeing so much more efficiency in asset managers and how they operate day to day. So for us, it's really more of a global conversation. And where we really saw things sort of shake up is sort of seeing the opportunity in China with DeepSeek. So DeepSeek is a Chinese AI company that garnered a lot of attention because they were able to create a large language model in a more cost-efficient way. And it really questioned the high sort of valuations on some of these companies here in the U.S. So it created some controversy within the AI space, showing us that there's opportunities probably outside of the U.S. Now that'll bring you to a different conversation around the U.S.-China AI race, but we won't go into that necessarily today. But there has been a growth in international stocks. They've been up about 18% this year, outpacing the U.S. I think it goes beyond AI, to be quite frank, in terms of why we've seen some growth. All it does really reemphasize our investment philosophy and being long-term investors that are diversified across the globe. And so the reason I think we're seeing a little bit of this is lower valuations. So cheaper starting points relative to their earnings potential in international stocks, as well as just the growing competition within within the U.S. against the Mag 7. I mean, there's competition within the Mag 7, but I think globally we'll see some competition. Again, not just necessarily in these mega cap names, but across different industries, different companies. So for me, I would emphasize there's still a lot of growth opportunity within the Mag 7. So with me saying that, still, I think there's opportunity here in the U.S., but we want to make sure that we're creating a portfolio that could withstand various market cycles. So the importance of diversifying outside, and we're seeing some of that theme play out this year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for highlighting that, Johara. And I think just to kind of marry a couple of those things together, it's not necessarily that DeepSeek is the one competitor that's going to end this trend, but it's an example of what could happen when you have inflated valuations in some of these companies, how quickly investors can react to the downside. And Bryan, I really want to shift gears. I want to end with a little bit of Wespath's perspective, our journey with AI as we've integrated the technology here in the office. But before we do that, to put you on the spot a little bit, to have you try to give a little bit of that investor's perspective as well. You're reading the same news we're reading. You're seeing those same stories. Something like that DeepSeek story that Johara referenced earlier this year, a new technology coming out of China, cheaper, more efficient, quicker developing. What did you make of that headline?
Yeah, well, I think like everybody, the claims that they put out there and published were pretty sensationalized, right? I mean, there's just astounding, adoption and their approach to implementing the large language models. To Johara's point, the capex that they required supposedly to invest in to build that platform was truly remarkable. Since that came out, of course, there's been an army of folks that have been trying to debunk
Right.
and kind of demystify that. I think some of that has kind of come to fruition a little bit, and so the real cost of developing DeepSeek, I think, was, significantly larger than claimed. But to your point and Johara's point, I think it really opened folks' minds to, hey, there's
Right.
different ways to attack this problem and to think about how you develop these types of platforms in the future. And I think it has kind of launched a new way of thinking about it, and probably, quite frankly, created opportunities for a lot smaller companies to, startups to start investing in this space and figure out how they can get a piece of the pie, if you would. So yeah, I think it's really kind of opened eyes in a lot of ways.
Great.
And I just want to say, Brian's not totally sharing all of this at the moment, but you've made us so much more efficient with so many AI opportunities here internally. And I've had the privilege of being able to use some of that work, whether it's our ability to scan the book of discipline really quickly, which could be time consuming without AI. So, it's one of many great
Exactly.
things that we have here.
Yeah, speaking of good ways to solve problems,
Yeah.
if we could just wrap up with a little bit of what you've seen internally here at Wespath, how we've been able to adopt AI, or challenges that you're seeing on, and how organizations like ours can kind of get up to speed on this technology.
Yeah, so we've largely settled on, for a big chunk of our staff using Microsoft's AI platform Copilot, and the reason for that is around security and protection of data primarily, right? So we've configured it to make sure that any data that we put into the AI platform will not get out and be made public. So I want to make sure everybody understands that first. We're being very appropriately cautious, I think, but in terms of how we're leveraging it, so we are seeing employees use Copilot and other platforms for non-confidential type work to really drive efficiency, right? So jumpstarting content creation, jumpstarting, aggregating data and analyzing vast volumes of data. AI is really good at that. That's why you have all these specialized processors that are very much focused on exactly those types of use cases from all the big Mag 7 companies. So we're seeing employees taking advantage of that. It's largely around customer efficiency and creating efficiencies for staff so that we can kind of upskill our staff, if you would, a bit, and focus on higher critical thinking and emotional aspects that AI just can't do right now. We're also starting to look at using AI to build predictive models around things like church vitality, church fragility, looking at impact of livelihood and socioeconomic factors around clergy and laity and church locations and that kind of stuff. So we're really trying to experiment in a lot of different ways to figure out how we can leverage this platform and this technology for good for those that we serve and those whose institutional funds we care for.
That's amazing. That's amazing. As a mission-driven organization serving other mission-driven organizations, I think it's a really good anecdote on how this technology can be used to power missions. So it's really important to us and our viewers. Johara and Bryan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
you.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you very much.